The ocean is a terrifying place full of all kinds of creatures. But is there something larger lurking in the deep? Or is it merely a tall tale told by sailors? This is Unreal Encounters. The Kraken. Welcome to the season finale of Unreal Encounters, where we examine the mysterious and the unexplained. I'm joined here once again by Josh and Lindsay.
Hey.
Today we are talking about the mythical Kraken. I feel like this is one of the ones that you guys actually know a lot about.
I've heard of this one.
We fought a Kraken. Fun fact, we're in the same D&D group.
Yeah, I was like, when did we... Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Kraken, it's
So they're
big
obviously
squid.
real.
If they're in D&D, that means they're real.
Everything in D&D is real.
Yeah.
Stranger Things told me that.
It's on TV, it must be true.
It's on TV, it must be true. When you were a sailor, you took several risks as you traveled out to sea. There was always the risk of storms or waves sinking your ship. Then there was always the risk of disease or scurvy taking you. But even with all of these, there was an even more terrifying monster lurking in the depths. It would come without warning, wrapping up ships with its massive tentacles, grabbing sailors off the deck and eventually bringing the ship itself to the depths. This beast was known as the Kraken, a terrifying cephalopod of massive size with a taste for human flesh and sinking entire ships to get it. So, I mean, I feel like everybody knows the Kraken. It's a huge, massive... The image we see is the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes. Jack Sparrow just like bravely standing up to it. And,
with like the pearl getting smashed in half and like pulled down by the Kraken. So that's kind of like the image that we see of the Kraken. So we'll start with that, and then we'll go back to what the legends of the Kraken.
Yeah.
Which come ways back. Legends of the Kraken go all the way back to the year 1180, when King Sever of Norway wrote the tales from his sailors who had seen a large squid-like creature while sailing. As was said before, sailors experienced many dangers during sailing, and, due to this, many think they may have indeed seen something in the depths that caused them to fear for their very lives.
Oh, boy.
So, all the way back 1180, we have a sighting of a giant squid-like creature in Norway.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. And I mean,
So, way back.
if you think about it too, like, you've got all sorts of different legends that go way, way back of, like, giant squids and sea monsters and things like that. I think we mentioned before Charybdis, the Greek legend of the monster that will, swallow a ship whole. But, yeah, these go way back, and they have some founding.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those where it's like, if you did see the big squid in the water, that'd be pretty... And obviously they went back and told the king about it. They're like, hey, we saw a big squid.
Yeah.
I don't know if they knew really what squid were.
And we almost died.
We almost died.
A large creature that had many tails with weird sucky things on them.
Yeah. And I guess the other question is, like, how big was their boat at this point? Like, were they in, like, long ships at this point? Which is, like, at that point, it's not a very big boat to have a big squid come by, because... You think about sailing ships, like going back to Pirates of the Caribbean, it's like the Black Pearl is a decent sized ship.
Yeah.
Like the Kraken had to be huge to drag that down. But it's just a long ship. Like they could pick that up and carry it on land. Like I don't know.
I would not feel safe.
You're like, there's not much between the ocean
I'd
and
say,
you.
thank you, but I think I'm done sailing for the rest of my life. Keep your squids.
Keep your squids, your Krakens, and get back to your hometown.
I'm going back to the homestead.
Going back to land where the squids ain't.
Squids ain't.
Alright, let's continue with this. The Kraken began to slip into sailor lore as time went on, with most people not truly believing that a giant squid-like creature could be living in the depths of the ocean. That is, until one day in 1853, on a Denmark beach, a large squid washed ashore. People were stunned. Was the Kraken indeed real? So this brings us to the point where, as humanity, we just discovered there's giant squid in the water. Like before this date, people were like, "Oh, there's giant squid underground, like under the water," and everybody was like, "Yeah,
Yeah, right.
You're funny.
And
And you're a triangle.
unicorns are real."
And there's a plesiosaur in Loch Ness. Yeah.
I saw a Dover demon in Massachusetts. I think that was way later. But you get the thing where it's like people are like, this is just a joke. And then a corpse washes up on the beach and everybody's like, oh, that's a big squid.
Yeah.
That is a very big squid.
Alrighty.
Is real.
The year is now 2023, and we know that there are several species of giant squid and colossal squid that live in the depths of the ocean, and occasionally come to the surface. This means, unlike our other episodes, there really aren't any theories about what the Kraken could be, since, in a way, we have already solved this mystery. But the question remains, did it really sink ships and eat people? And do we have to worry about modern Kraken attacks?
Ooh, that's a cool topic.
So we really don't have theories, because it's like, was the Kraken real? I mean, it probably was, like we talked a little bit about Ozark Howler last time, blowing like a bear out of proportion and being like, oh, it's a Ozark Howler. It's like, it's just a bear.
Yeah.
In this case, like, it's a giant squid, which is still a giant squid. Giant squid, I think, let's see, 40-something feet. So they're like 40-something feet long.
Big.
From tentacle to tip of the... What is the top of a squid called?
Its head?
The bullet shape?
I
I have no idea what the top of a squid is
top
called.
of squid to tentacle, it's
End
like
to
40
end.
feet. End to
Yes.
end, a squid like 40 feet long. It's like, that, if a sailor in a longboat saw that, I'd be pretty terrified. Be like, what is that?
Yeah.
And I do wonder, because sometimes like sharks and stuff, like great white sharks are terrifying, but you think about like seeing a great white shark in a tiny rowboat versus seeing a great white shark from a cruise ship.
Yeah.
Like,
Fast.
there's a very big difference in size of ship versus size of animal, where you're like, oh, it's a great white shark on a cruise ship, whereas in the fishing boat you're like, get to shore, get to shore, get to shore.
So these Danish guys in a long ship. Swedish.
The Norwegian.
Yeah, Norwegian. Somewhere in Scandinavia.
North
these,
Swedish.
These Norse guys in a long ship were like, we're gonna need a bigger boat.
Yeah. I think there was a little bit of that.
Took too long to get to that joke.
That's okay. They need a bigger boat and a smaller fish.
Alrighty, well, shall we see if giant squid eat people?
Yeah,
Yes.
let's find out.
First off, giant squid are not capable of eating people since they do not have large enough mouths. But, could they sink ships? In order to know if these squid could possibly attack and sink ships, first we need to look at their size compared to the size of ships. The largest specimen ever found by scientists was 46 feet in length and weighed a total of 1,091 pounds. For comparison, the Nina, one of Christopher Columbus's ships, that he took to try and find India, was only 50 feet in length, meaning the squid would have only been a few feet shorter than the ship. So, the giant squid this was the biggest shock to me. 46 feet, I was like, that's not too big. Then realizing Christopher Columbus's, one of his ships was about that same length. And if this is the biggest specimen we found.
Yeah.
The giant and colossal squid are deep sea creatures, which means we probably haven't seen the biggest one.
No.
Yeah.
So if there's one that's 60 feet, it'd be bigger than the ship. That's not to say it could pull it underwater, but if I'm a sailor and that thing swims by, that's the length of the ship,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go home and tell people, I saw the Kraken.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Not to mention, like, as far as actually sinking the ship, ships are not hard to sink. If you can tilt it,
Tip it enough to get water in there.
if you get water inside, it's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if, this thing, it weighed, 1,000-something pounds, it said?
Yeah.
Just grab onto
Holy
one side.
crap.
And
Well,
yeah.
and the other disadvantage old ships have with their big mast, if the squid were to, for whatever reason, get on the mast and just pull weight, it's now tipping the entire ship with a lever arm that's going to tip the ship over.
Yeah.
And so there's not too many records, like modern day records of, well, let's continue and we'll see about that. But do colossal squids attack boats? To answer that question, we must first discuss a colossal squid predator, the sperm whale. This carnivorous whale has also inspired its own legends and stories, with books like Moby Dick and one story of a sperm whale actually sinking a whaling ship. These large whales will actually eat giant squid and colossal squid if they can get a hold of them. Often sperm whales are seen with damage on their heads from these squids trying to escape. And though it is normally seen as a fight, it is really just these squids trying to get away from the whales since they don't have the ability to kill a sperm whale. in order to answer, do they attack boats? We look at one of the main predators. In fact, I think the only predator of giant squid or colossal squid, the sperm whale. Which, like I said, Moby Dick.
Yeah.
This thing. And there's the story of it sinking a whaling ship. Like one of them charged and sunk. Speaking of things sinking ships, a sperm whale sunk a whaling ship.
There you go.
So they basically get hunted by these large whales, which a lot of I remember as a kid it was, and this was just the funny research part of it. They'd be like, oh, the giant squids fight the sperm whales as they try to eat it, and when you do the actual thing, it's no, it's really just the giant squids trying to get out of the sperm whale's mouth because they do not have the capability to kill the sperm whale. So it's do giant squids have the ability to really kill ships intentionally? Probably not, because they don't have the ability to kill a sperm whale. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like I said, put enough weight on the ship and it might pull the ship down.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't think that it's intentionally I am trying to bring you down, but it's hey, this is something I don't understand.
Let me check it out.
It's here, and I'm
gonna explore
I'm gonna touch it.
Yeah. Whoop, we're tipping.
He touched the butt.
Though we are unsure of why, in 1930, in 3 separate instances, smaller fishing boats were attacked by giant squids. The squids smacked the boats with their tentacles until they slid into the boat's propellers and were chopped up. Though we are unsure why these squid attacked the boats, scientists theorize that they may have mistaken them for whales and attacked them to protect themselves. So, it is possible that giant squid attacked sailing ships back in the day, and since many fishing ships were only 15 to 20 feet in length, maybe even sink those ships. So, kind of going back to it's Christopher Columbus had a pretty big boat.
Yeah.
Most people had a 15-foot or 20-foot boat.
Yeah.
And we have several accounts in the 1930s of giant squid attacking fishing boats. Granted, the giant squid died when it went into the propeller of the boat, but old sailing ships didn't have propellers to suck the squid into. Yeah. So I guess answering the question of, do giant squid attack boats? The answer is yes, they do.
Yes, they have.
And
they
will.
Said,
we don't fully know why. Yeah. We've thought that maybe they mistake them for sperm whales and kind of panic and attack it. Maybe it's I guess the question is, maybe it's the current of the propeller that pulls them in, and then they just attack the boat because of that.
Yeah. Or it could be oh, get away, don't eat me, sort of thing.
Yeah. And maybe it's just the boat happened to crash into it, and so the squid freaked out and hit the boat. Yeah. And so maybe there was some people that did get attacked by a giant squid and had their boat and obviously if the boat sank, we didn't really have an account of oh, the Kraken pulled the boat down. But if they were sailing a boat, this giant squid attacks the boat, and they hit it with their swords or whatever, chase it off, then they're oh my gosh, we almost died by the Kraken.
Yeah, not to mention that's probably just freaky, and I imagine the squid's wait a minute, this isn't what I thought it was. Yeah. It's not reacting it should.
A sperm whale.
Like a sperm whale. Yeah. Also, I just have to say, the person that was on the boat with the propeller, they must have been praying so hard when they realized this thing is after them, and it just got chopped up into a propeller. No way. We survived. What?
We lived. I'm sure there's just blood in the water just around the boat.
That'd be so gross.
I don't know, because I think giant squid also do have ink as well. Just all squid have ink sacs.
Blood
and so there's probably just black water around the boat. And I'm sure the giant squids probably jet ink everywhere because they do that to the sperm whales when they're trying to eat them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so it's we need so you're probably the water is black around your boat. There's this tentacles slapping the boat.
Seriously,
if you're
these guys must have been traumatized. They're I ain't going out on the water. You can do what you want. I'm gonna start hunting.
I'm going back to the homestead.
I'm gonna become a farmer.
Yes.
I'm gonna go work on the farm.
On shore all day.
I'll take my chances with wolves in the woods.
Yeah.
I'm leaving that Kraken in the water.
Happened in the 10th century, it's happening today.
Yeah. And so, with that, it's I look back at let's see, what was the 1180, I think, was the first one in Norway. You're just maybe these people did get attacked, they didn't even mention it attacked them. They just said, they saw it swam by. And it's there's people in the 1930s that got attacked by squids. And at that point, you could be that's a giant squid. But at the same time, you're probably still freaking out. Like you said, probably ah! And then it
what
goes,
is this?
It probably went through the propeller. You hear goes through the propeller. You're just are we alive? Is it over? I'd go back to shore, get off the boat, and never go back out of the ocean.
Is this where Cosmic Horror comes from? Is this where Cthulhu comes from?
I mean, probably, because there's elements of all that.
That's
I mean,
valid.
I mean, like, we talk about the Kraken, you're like...
Yeah.
And obviously, like I said, Pirates of the Caribbean vision of the Kraken is like chopping a sailing ship in half and pulling it down. But you can easily see how sailors would make that assumption if they're on like a tiny 15, 20-foot boat, getting like attacked and being like, oh, we're going to go down, like it's going to break the ship. And then maybe they fight it off, they're like, oh, we lived. And then you heard like, oh, this other ship didn't make it back. Maybe that other ship got flipped by a wave, whatever. But you're like, oh, they didn't make it back. Well, maybe the Kraken got them. And so you're in your mind, you're like, oh, that ship got turned in half. We just got lucky. We fought it off.
Yeah.
And in reality, it was never going to sink your ship, but you just thought it might.
Yeah.
Yep.
And actually, I'm going to look something up because I'm curious how long the Black Pearl is supposed to be. Because the sailing ships I've discovered are not as bad as I don't want. How long is the movie?
The ship is 2 hours and 23 minutes.
Okay, so the Black Pearl. So the Black Pearl is an East Indiaman galleon, which is a 165-foot boat. So it's a big boat. So yeah, the Black Pearl is a much larger boat. And like, you were talking about boats, but like I said, the Nina from Christopher Columbus's things, which you think of as a big boat, is the same length of as a thing. Well, that was the 40-something boat versus like the small sailing ships.
Yep.
But yeah, so it's kind of crazy to think about that it's possible there were like early sailors that got attacked by a giant squid.
Yeah. And you could just think, you just see this thing, you see something in the water, you get a little curious and you're like, what the heck? This thing is in the water, next thing you know, your boat has slowed down.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
and then you see tentacles coming over the edge of the boat. Horrifying.
Start praying!
Absolutely horrifying. Like, if that went down, I am so sorry. Whoever you were, and I say were because, I mean, you probably did actually make it, some of them. So.
Yeah, well, obviously we have the stories of
exactly,
some of them,
so somebody made it.
At this point, they're gone. But, and I, like, when you think about the way squid's tentacles move, like, I'm sure they're all just flailing everywhere, so
yeah,
it's not the squid actually trying to, like, grab people off, but the tentacles are just probably going everywhere, and you're just like, oh, it tried to get me! It tried to pull me under!
Yeah, and even just that's scary enough. I mean, even just seeing that, even if it's not grabbing you, it's like grabbing the boat, like, that's still very terrifying.
It's like, ah!
Yeah.
Myths often start with something real that we don't fully understand. As it turns out, the Kraken was indeed real, but misinterpreted by people. Myths are always twisted by stories and tellings of stories, building them up to things that are more than reality. We even see that the Kraken makes many appearances in stories, notably in Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and in Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean. Monsters like this will always fascinate us and lead us to discover more things about the world and the oceans around us. Well, that brings us to the end of our episode. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe so you know when the next season of Unreal Encounters is coming to Unreal Studios. And remember, stay curious.
And release the Kraken!